2 of the beta review. We've got about 12 hours on the bike now, so a little bit of a better sense of some of the things that are good about the bike and some of the things that are not so great. Okay, turning circle on the beta. Something I probably should have said at the very start, because it was definitely something I had a bit of an issue with, but I hadn't done enough hard snotty stuff yet to have really got annoyed with it. Eventually I did though. So I did the radiator modification, so you should see some close-ups of what that is. But basically now I can turn the bike to full lockout both directions, which is excellent. It does require you to actually bend in small concave divots into your radiators, which probably not ideal. In this case, I'm running radiator braces. I never did that with the KTMs, but I bent a hell of a lot of radiators on the KTM, so I'm gonna keep this one safe as long as I possibly can. AXP seems to be pretty good because the radiator brace itself connects in the center inside your frame, so I feel like it just gives a little bit more rigidity for any side impacts. It's gonna push across the brace as opposed to eventually pushing into the actual mounting bracket of the radiator, which I've seen the little knobs actually snap off where you mount your radiator. So when it comes to the suspension, I'm still really happy with how it's performing, but I will go up one set of spring rates on both the forks and the shock, because I've just noticed that as I've ridden it more and more, you know, so saying I've got 12 hours on the bike, I just find that it sits a little bit too low in the rear, and I can definitely do some things preload and I can change stag settings and things, but I'll be just chasing my tail if I don't set the spring rate correctly to my weight starting out. I did also notice the forks a little bit as you're coming down really steep hills. It tends to dig in a little bit and to just not hold up as you're going down the hill, so it feels like you're going over the bars. And then the other thing that I noticed is doing a big hill climb, because that rear just sits a little too low, the front comes up a little bit too steep, and it's a little bit terrifying because you feel like you're about to cartwheel backwards. It's been awesome to get tons of comments on the part 1. It's really good to go back and forth with you guys about different things you've done, different modifications you'd recommend, and just some awesome rider band between what brakes are better, Brembo or the Nissan. Super happy with the brakes. I still hold that they're better than my 2020 Brembo brakes on my KTM. What I have noticed though is over time, as you're riding throughout the day, say you've got 4 hours on the bike, you've been heavy on the front brake and your rotor and your pads heat up, that you do start to get a little bit of play in the front. Almost as if you've got like a slight bend in your rotor where it kind of comes on hard and then soft and hard and soft. Just a bit spongy. So that's the only real thing that I've noticed. I don't think that's pretty shocking for any brake, but once they cool down, it's back to normal. So I'm not sure if there's anything I can play around to change that, but it hasn't caused me any problems. My brakes aren't locking up. I'm still getting great brake performance. I'm just feeling a little bit more sponge or play in the brakes. So one thing that I will be doing with this bike is, as I was saying before, the stock gearing for this comes at 1448, and I have found that even though I've been able to get up all of the snotty stuff I've tried, I often have to drop down to first gear, which in hard enduro you don't really want to drop down to first gear. You get too much wheel spin, you don't get enough preload on the flywheel, and you kind of have nowhere else to go when you start, I guess, getting the low RPMs. You can't drop down a gear. So you don't want to be always having to start in first gear to do all the snotty stuff. You want to at least start in second, third, and then drop down the gears. So what I'll do is I'm going to keep 48 tooth sprocket on the rear, and I'm going to go down from my 14. I'm going to get a 12 and a 13 sprocket on the front and just see what I like better. But really what I'm aiming for is I just want my second gear to be sort of my go-to gear for all the snotty stuff, and first gear only if it's absolutely essential. The other thing I want to talk about is the overheating of the bike. So at the moment I have the oversized fuel pump mod, and then I also have a radiator fan, just the OEM one from Beta. And I have still found that, particularly it's summer now in Australia, it's pretty damn hot, that the bike does still overheat a little bit more than a KTM or a Gas or a Sherco or a Husky. And it's not like to the point where the bike's shutting down and seizing or anything like that. It's just you can start to smell the radiator coolant start to boil. I've ordered in the Samco radiator hoses, which will bypass the thermostat and give you just a little bit more cooling performance on the bike. But again, I've been doing some really snotty stuff, so it's kind of expected that the bike's going to be running pretty damn hot. do these modifications. So foot pegs, I'm running the S3 foot pegs. I think they're no lower or further back. I think it's actually the same position as your stock or your OEM foot pegs. But what you'll notice is being slightly wider, and just the way that it's shaped actually kind of drops a little further back, even though on their marketing it doesn't say that. Definitely throw on some kind of pipe guard. I don't like putting a lot of extra weight on the bike, so I go with everything as light as possible. Recommend that you do throw on a different set of grips. I've also got a billet throttle tube in here, which just means that I don't need to run my wraparounds, or I don't need to run bar ends. I also run ARC levers, which are supposed to be unbreakable. I have broken them before, but ARC will just replace them. So they cost a little bit up front, but then you kind of have the peace of mind that if you break them, they'll just replace them for you. And then you just grab your OEM levers and then throw them in your camel pack or something like that as backups. Definitely get rid of your Beta flag guards. They're so soft, they give too much, and so if a branch hits the flag guard, it's still just going to smack you in the hand or the wrist or the fingers. I went with these ones from Enduro Engineering. Excellent brand. I put a bunch of their stuff on this bike already. But the flag guard actually mounts directly onto the mounting bracket of both your front brake and your clutch. So it just gives an added level of support and protection to the entire bracket. And so if there's a big heavy front impact or you roll the bike, you're not going to break your master clutch brake mount. I'm actually still running the Maxxis tires, the stock ones that they came with. Most people, when they see a Maxxis tire on an enduro bike, they rip them straight off and throw them in the bin or burn them, which is usually the right place to put them. But I just thought I'd give these guys a shot, and so far they've held up all right. I mean, they're not great, they're no Midas double green, but they're doing all right for the terrain I'm riding, which is predominantly a little bit more of the harder, drier stuff now that it's summer. Seat cover, get rid of the stock seat cover. The seat, we've already talked about the seat and how painful that can be. I think my hips now are cracked apart to the point where I don't notice the pain from the seat at all. But having a different seat cover on has definitely made things a little bit better. Particularly the one gripper seat cover, they're exceptional. They give you so much grip that you almost can ride the bike up a hill without using your hands. So those are pretty exceptional. It'll reduce a lot of your arm pump. Something else that I think is somewhat interesting for those of you that maybe have some old KTM rims or something laying around, you want to use them when you beta. You can do that, but you just need to buy a spacer mod. So Enduro Engineering make actual spacer mods for a KTM rim to a beta. So I've got them in now. They're working brilliantly, but what I didn't factor in was the gearing on the beta is so low. So on the rear you've got a 48, and on the KTMs I've been predominantly running 52 tooth sprockets on the rear. That when I tried to put this rim on, it didn't actually go onto my bike because the gearing is too high. So you're gonna have to get a small sprocket for the rear, so probably just go a 48 and you should be right.